Some people like the headphones. Some people,
for me,
are
I
not
just
fans.
I
You
start
just
thinking about listening to myself,
pulls you out of the
and
conversation.
then it pulls me out of the natural conversation. I have to like really push to try to sound like I'm in a conversation.
I normally just wear them because it's easier for me editing the audio because I can kind of hear if there's like audio issues, but one-on-one it's
gotcha. I do need to practice because I had this conversation with Tex and Justin a few times where it's like I just need to practice and get
it's
comfortable
a weird
with
feeling though. How often do you hear yourself talk?
Yeah, your
and,
real voice.
Are actively thinking about it.
I mean, I'm getting more used to it because we're doing more Instagram stuff and more YouTube and all that where you just inevitably hear yourself. But still in real time, we're like, man, I'm actually sounding like that. Sound like
and trying to have a real conversation.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, what? Is that me talking? Is that them talking?
Yeah.
Has it been an adjustment being on camera for you?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's probably the most typical flow of how it goes where you are just super nervous and don't know what to say, don't know what to do. And I still don't know. I'm still not good at it. But after basically now 2 years of much more intentional Instagramming and talking on camera and interviews and stuff, at least understanding it helps because you start, when you listen and watch people edit stuff, you start to kind of think about what they need from you. And like when in interviews, for example, they would ask me a question. I would give them very short, sort of like
one word.
Like, what's your favorite part of the build? Oh, framing. Next. But like they're looking for expounding and conversation.
Flesh out the idea a little.
Yeah, give them 10 minutes and they can cut it to 10 seconds or whatever if they need to. But yeah, so getting there.
It's a work in progress. I've been doing it for quite a few years now and I'm still in and out. Still working on it.
Have you taken like voice classes and coaching or things like that or YouTube or anything?
Probably good.
I've watched some and it's amazing. Even just the little bits of advice about just like using more of your tones and stuff rather, because I by nature talk very flat and I probably still will today because that's how I talk. But when we're like, we have a few radio ads going, for example, and they'll like have me read a script and they're like, sound excited, smile when you talk and, do it again. Like read it 15 times. Like, you're still talking flat. I'm like, that's how I talk.
I wonder if that's just the nature of radio too.
Yeah.
Where it is, you have that radio voice that people know.
Yeah.
So they kind of fall into that. You got to punch it up a little bit.
Yeah.
You could talk however you want to talk.
Well, you're going to get what you get.
You can be flat. Yeah, you're fine.
I'm not going to try too hard either way. But
I did take a communications course in college.
I did too. For one small group communications.
Yeah, that was my same story.
Really?
And that was
Where was
really
it at? Shasta College?
No, it was Lynn Benton Community College.
Okay.
Up outside of Corvallis.
Gotcha. That was the only class I liked. I took some college classes because I was like, oh, you go to college after high school.
It's just what you do.
And that was a filler one. But the small group communication, we had to do like a little filming project specifically to, I don't know how that was directly related to small group communication. I don't remember that. I think it was just because you had to communicate with a small group the whole time. They gave you like 4 other people, a group of 5, to make a film project on making an advertisement for Reading to, come here, move here, whatever, make it exciting. But really the project was working with 4 other people and communicating, and that was what it was about. But it was really interesting. And that's like the only class in college that I really remember because it was significant in just teaching you the basics of what is really happening during communication.
Did you have to get up in front of the class and pitch it as a group?
No.
No, it was just the 4
guys. No. Yeah.
They
played the video, but...
For the class?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't too good.
It's part of the fun, though. And that's part of the JC atmosphere. You guys were just trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
Our final project, I remember, we got paired up in 2s, and we had to pitch a product to the class. And I think our product had already existed, but it hadn't come to market yet, so we got away with it. It was a heads-up display for motorcycle helmets. Mm-hmm. And so you would have a rear-view camera mounted on the back.
Oh, that's
and
wild.
You could see it in one corner, and then you'd have your speed. You'd have like all your standard HUD stuff for.
And that was a real product?
Real product. I don't know if it's out in market now, but that was our idea. And then we found out, somebody else is already working on this, but the professor let us run with it anyways. Communications is a great class to take. I don't know about a major. I don't know what people are doing with that if you're doing comms, but I loved it. That was one of my favorite classes. Great professor, was really passionate about what he was doing.
That makes all the difference.
Oh yeah.
I think the single biggest like topic or thing that I learned there was just they had like a pie chart basically of this is communication, this is how much is your actual word choice, and it was way smaller, and it was like this is your tone inflection, this is your body language, and all these other things that you kind of intuitively know, but like seeing it on paper and have someone explain it to you was pretty powerful because he gave several obvious examples of, when you're talking to someone and you have, a snappy tone with you or something. It doesn't matter what the words were. If you had that tone, they pick up that tone, and you could have said, those same words in 12 different ways and communicated 12 different things. So,
and the tone's almost more powerful than what's being
said.
At
Exactly.
the end of the day.
Yeah. With sarcasm and with all the different things. Yeah.
That's been one of the things for me doing this is, unfortunately, I have to listen back. Otherwise I wouldn't. When I'm editing, you're walking through it.
Yeah.
And hearing yourself cycle through the same 20 to 30 words, or you have these singular words that you bring out occasionally throughout a variety of different
we're all creatures of habit.
Oh, man. And trying to break that, or especially filler words. That was a challenge for me.
Yeah.
It's still a challenge for me. Less so, hopefully now.
Working on the likes and the ums. I've always tried to do that because I've always been painfully aware ever since I had one teacher that would just like yell at us over it. But that doesn't mean I'm perfect at it yet either.
Was that the comms teacher?
No, it was like elementary. I don't even remember which teacher. I just remember I do. Shouldn't say her name, but great teacher.
Give her a shout out.
Yeah. Changed my life. Yeah. Just would like yell at us over the like. And yeah, still do it a little bit, but it definitely at least made me think about it. So I don't just.
And being aware of it's half the battle.
Yeah.
Once you hear yourself say it, you can say, okay, let me pull back on that.
Right.
And not use, let me just pause.
But then I'll think about it saying it.
I've had a few guests. In the beginning, I would bring it up if a guest would say it, because I've had guests that they say like every third word. And so I'd say something, and then they're just too aware of it, and it gets in their head, and you have to back.
And they're all self-conscious. And
then they don't want to, then they default to one-word sentences.
Yeah.
We're just sitting in here with silence.
Yeah, that's tough because you got to sort of on the fly walk people into a podcast and like pick up on their communication level and make little maybe tweaks to help it be usable for you. And
I'm not skilled enough to do that. So I just let them go, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
So you went to a JC after high school. Were you not thinking construction? Was that not a path?
No, I wasn't even thinking about life at that point. I was just coming out of high school and kind of just assuming that like that's a good safe route is just kind of pick one and go, and Shasta College is close by, and I like to snowboard and mountain bike, and so I more so went there because it's an excuse to get out, but it's not so far that it's like way out of the comfort zone. It happened to be like one of the years at Shasta where they just almost never opened the mountain because they just didn't get snow, so it kind of backfired in that sense that I was all geared up and excited and
no snow,
bearing through college to at least have winter to look forward to over there, because summer is incredibly hot over in Redding, of course. And so having a little bit of mountain bike experience, was excited for that, but going from like 58-degree coastal summer days here sometimes to 158-degree summer days over there felt like it's a little bit of an adjustment period. So
what were you going to school for? Did you have an idea for that?
I don't.
You're like, I just want to get out.
No, I don't even remember if I had any. I don't even remember what the phrases are for that, like majors or whatever. I didn't have any of that picked out. I just went and started, and I went there for a semester. It was just like, this isn't gonna do it for me. And building didn't really have a place in my mind at all back then, because it was just, I was still in sort of a party phase, psychedelics, trying to figure out who you are, what's the purpose of life, where do I fit into all this, and like making money and all that. It wasn't necessarily at the forefront, and part of that is because of the privilege of growing up in a household where my parents were successful and were paying for my college, and I had a fuel card, so I barely had to pay anything to get by. And so it wasn't, I wasn't in survival mode thinking like I need to figure out what job I can get. So construction wasn't there yet. Not even close.
Did you want to go away to kind of get out of Humboldt? Because you're born and raised here, right?
Well, not quite. I mean, might as well be. But no, I was born in Santa Cruz. Moved from Santa Cruz to Montana, actually, until I was about 5. So I didn't move up there. I was, brought in the back of the, pickup truck up there. I have faint memories of being up there when I was little, but then we spent every summer up there after moving back here for kindergarten, and been here since kindergarten. So very familiar with the area. Basically born in California, raised in California, but spent the first 5 years in Montana. But it created this element of realizing what it's like in other places where the entire state has a smaller population than one city in California. There's just more room to breathe, cleaner air, cleaner waters, more water. And I miss it up there all the time. I got engaged to my wife up there, for example, and I still like very much hold it as like a sacred place in my heart. So I do fantasize about packing up and building homes up there and seeing the blue sky every day and whatnot. But
be a beautiful state to do that in.
Yeah. And some of her family lives up in Idaho. That's about 2 hours away from like where my home base is considered up there.
Idaho's
Montana.
nice too.
So
Coeur d'Alene's really nice.
Yep, they live about an hour from there. So
location.
maybe one day,
Yeah.
but we're pretty rooted here. We do a lot of business here and just have a lot of work that we've put into here with just our local connections and, marketing and all that stuff. And we're pretty well rooted, but I would say if we're talking about vacation locations and maybe like out of state Airbnb type investment things, we've talked about doing that because our family could take care of it and it would give us an excuse like, oh, we got to go maintain the property up there for a month or 2 or 3.
Get away, check it out. Make sure
we got to
okay.
go make sure it's okay. Winter at it for a couple months. We'll bring in the snowboard. Yeah. So
what was the decision? So you're in college, you're at Shasta, just doesn't click. You're not really feeling it.
Yeah. Like, why did I move home?
Yeah.
I moved home because for one, I was pissed. I was like, I moved over here to snowboard and have fun, and it's too hot to mountain bike, and there's no snow to snowboard. And from there, did the classic, Humboldt thing, go to a pot farm, find some cash to make, and was making a pretty good living there, but lived out in Blocksburg on a farm for a while and had fun for a little bit, but I couldn't do the lifestyle out there. It was, you come into town on the weekends, maybe. I'm a person that kind of scoops up responsibility by nature for the most part. And so the problem is on a farm that can be a recipe for becoming responsible for everything, which, the boss is going to love, and the other guys are going to love too. But then all of a sudden you're the guy that can't really take off on the weekends because when the generator breaks down, you're the guy. When this happens, you're the guy. So
you're picking up all the slack.
Yeah. And so I quickly realized that I was married to that place and that I had to get off the mountain, so to speak. And even though I was making a pretty good, weekly wage, I forgot what it was, like $5,000 a week or something. But I would just like spend a bunch in town and not know how I spent that much, and then buy $800 of grocery at Costco, which is like normal nowadays. But back then that was, serious. And then be all optimistic. Like, I'm going to eat lettuce and healthy stuff and get fit out in the mountain, and then waste it all and just eat all the junk food, come back into town, and just a cycle of like still making good money, but not keeping any of it type thing. And realized that more than anything, my heart wasn't in it. And from there, I moved back to Rio Del and lived next to Nev and Friesen. If you've heard of the Friesens, they're a Mennonite family. And they had actually built my parents' home back in 2007, 8, like right before / during like the 07, 08 crisis, financial crisis. And so back then I was just a little skater punk kid watching those guys, build. And I thought it was the coolest thing ever because I built skate ramps my whole life. And I thought that was, important to me, but it never clicked as something that would be a way to make a living or anything. And Nevin just knocked on my door one day, and on the down low, I was actually just taking bong rips for like 3 hours before that. And he's a very clean cut Mennonite guy where probably didn't even know what a bong is, and knocks on the door and just, hey, Joey Viltrakis, I remember you've grown up awful quick these last few years. You want to come build houses with us? And I remember him just being chipper and me being like, oh my gosh, does he know I'm just stoned right now? What does he care? Does he even know what that is? So I was just like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not? Because I was in that mode where I just was clueless about what to do and didn't have quite an epiphany moment at that time, but definitely chewed on it that night going like, okay, he wants me to come build houses with him. I watched them build cool houses. I've always thought they're really cool. And I guess I do have experience. I was definitely the green guy. I was definitely the naive guy that asked a billion questions, but I had hands-on experience and safety, basic know-how. So it's kind of history from there as far as my career. That was kind of the day that it started, and had to get cleaned up a little bit and quit smoking so much, and then quit smoking altogether eventually after that, and got married, had some kids, and here we are today.
The rest is history.
Yeah. So
that's funny. I got sucked into a Instagram rabbit hole where I've been watching Amish people build these huge barns and barn dominiums. I don't know how that got into my feed, but great builders. Oddly enough, that community, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just their nature of hard work, that they just can build, Mennonites included. They're just great builders.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in their blood. They they probably don't call them this, but some people call the Mennonites the backslidden Amish, because the Amish are like next level separation, where it's like
a little more hardcore.
They can't use electricity unless they generate it, but they have all these funny loopholes where they can like they have their Sabbath thing, so to speak, where they're not allowed to work and do different things, including not turn on or off electrical things, but they're allowed to hint it at you like, hey, Nick, you know, it sure is dark in here. Man, imagine if there was just some light.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah, and you can go walk over and turn on for them, but they can't, you know, do it themselves. But that's kind of a rabbit hole. So Mennonite are not Amish, but they're very similar in their work ethic and in their, you know, raising kids with work at the heart of what they do. I don't think that they educate past 8th grade, but maybe it's 10th grade. But they're still some of the most like intelligent, street smart, if you want to call it that, or farm smart. They all know how to weld and drive and fix stuff and all that stuff at an incredibly young age. So they're just very like, and that's kind of my language, my love language. I was built up very, you know, hands-on and, you know, doing remodels with my parents. So I definitely clicked with their culture in some ways back then, not all the ways, but they were still a good, solid group of guys to be around that definitely just were rich in their, you know, desire for good quality work and to have that atmosphere protected as a very special thing. They're very clean cut when it comes to their work sites, their offices, and very, very streamlined and precise in how they hold meetings and how they run the business. It's not just some haphazard thing. So seeing that was pretty new to me, and seeing that side of things mixed with building was kind of inspiring to me, I guess you could say. So,
well, and a great teacher to have to instill a level of work ethic, you know, to watch them and say, okay, this is how it's done. This is like what hard work looks like, and pride in your work.
Yeah.
What did your parents do?
My dad's a radiologist at St. Joe's here, primarily. I mean, he doesn't work for St. Joe's. He works for like a private medical group. Worked at Redwood Memorial in Fortuna, Mad River up in Arcata, but primarily nowadays just at St. Joe's. And then my mom was a physician's assistant, so we're both in the medical field, and my mom isn't anymore, but now she's a real estate broker.
Wow. I mean, it's got to be hard. How old were you when you were working on the farm?
Sorry, what farm?
The grow farm.
Oh, grow farm. I was thinking Mennonite. I was like,
no,
wasn't corn.
I can't imagine you were out there helping them.
Like, did I tell them
yeah.
So that was right after college. I graduated, so I skipped 7th grade, graduated high school kind of early. I just got my driver's license senior year, and then went to college for, say, a year, so 17. So probably like 18 out on the farm. And then
that's pretty hard for a guy to walk away from $5,000 a week, especially back then. What year are we talking?
Oh, you're making me do math. I graduated in 2011. College would be 2012-ish. Not college would be 2013-ish then. So 2013, 2014-ish. It was good money, but part of the effect of having success in my life was that I wasn't, like, of course I want success just like everyone else does, but I wasn't enamored by it. And that like $5,000 a week didn't mean the world to me if I wasn't happy and if I wasn't feeling like I was doing something meaningful, especially because I wasn't keeping it. I was somehow spending it, but also what didn't have like a, you know, $50,000 truck and all these cool things. I just was bad at money managing and I had no clue what I was doing. So yeah.
Just came as fast or went as fast as it came.
Yeah, exactly. Faster sometimes. Still would have credit card debt somehow with that, but
that's impressive.
Yeah.
Yeah. To walk away from that. But it's important because when you're doing something like that and you're making a lot of money, if the passion's not there, it's almost soul crushing.
Yeah. It felt empty.
Yeah.
I mean, I definitely appreciate growing. Like we have a greenhouse in our place in Carlotta, and it taught me a lot about how to train tomato plants because they're very similar in their vigorous growth, but then they'll kind of grow themselves to death if you don't like prop them up just right or train them or like make them strong and keep them, you know, trimmed up and nice so they don't get all mildewy in the inside. And I definitely have a passion there, but I'm not going to be a gardener for a living. As much as awesome it as that is for people that are, it's not me and it's not in my heart. But it definitely grew that side of things in my heart for a hobby. I mean, I love growing stuff. I wouldn't say bonsaiing trees, but like I will plant a tree that's going to take 50 years to get big, and I'll still like pay attention to the little branches and the little leaves and think like, okay, maybe this eucalyptus or this willow tree that I'm growing in my backyard, because those are pretty vigorous growers that I'll think about what it's going to look like in 20 years from now, even if we sell the property, because I still like it. It's just, it wasn't where my heart was at. And now I can sort of give it its rightful place in my heart as a hobby, but it's not what I do for a living. So
you don't have to do it every day.
Yeah.
And think, oh, I'm making money, but this sucks. I've always been fascinated by the genetic aspect of the work that those guys do, splicing genes together, cloning these plants.
That's so far.
Oh, man. I've had some guys on the guy that runs Arcata Fire is coming to mind, but I can't think of his name. and he was breaking down their cloning process and all of this stuff. And I'm sitting here like, oh,
this phenotypes and genotypes and all
way
that
above
stuff.
my pay grade.
Nope. We had one strain and we grew a lot of it.
That's the way. That's what I would be doing.
Yeah.
Just stick to one. Find one you like. Stick to that.
I was so nose blind, high blind, everything. I could smoke it all day long and I wouldn't think I smelled. And it was all I lived and breathed. And the barn thing that I lived in was just full of it. And all my clothes were full of it. And I just was a skunk 24/7, but just thought I smelled normal. And nowadays I'm like, oh man, I couldn't sleep in a room like that nowadays. But you get used to what you're doing all the time. So.
And you were doing some psychedelics back then? Was that in college or that was a little more high school?
More so around college / pot farm, going to reggae, going to different local festivals, going down to Lightning in a Bottle and some things like that. And I wasn't like a regular user. I wasn't like comfortable in that scene as much as trying it out and seeing if it was my thing. And in a similar way, didn't find it as something that clicked with me. I definitely had some intense moments and some really heavy self-reflection moments about who I was or how I was treating people. And I would say that played a huge role in just my character nowadays, because I think there's definitely a lot of value in having sort of a zoomed out, I didn't have like an outer body experience, so to speak, but having a zoomed out perspective on your decisions and yourself without, your ego in the way. I don't know if I had the quote unquote ego death, experience that people talk about. But I could say that I was able to look at myself and my decisions with a pretty neutral perspective of like, hey, are you making people happy or sad? And take sort of a harsh look at your decision making and make adjustments. So I don't do it casually nowadays. I don't do it nowadays, but I would still say that it's not a time in my life that I regretted whatsoever. I don't have any sort of moral opposition to it, even though I don't do it now. But I would just say that it, for me, had its limits, and I didn't want to ever get into using it casually and recreationally. Don't have anything against people that do, but it played a pretty powerful role in my life, and I wouldn't probably be the same person without it in a good way. So
I think it's
for what you want.
It's a great tool for that self-reflection. Mm-hmm. I think people focus on the party aspect a lot of the times, going out to raves or doing stuff like that, these social gatherings, and just having fun with it. But it is a powerful tool.
I tried to do that, but I would end up in the long 10-hour, what felt like 10-hour conversations where you're just like crying and bawling your eyes out and trying to like find your better person that you can be. I had a couple of fun experiences, like at Reggae on the River one time, tripping on acid on the beach with a couple guys, and we laughed. So we're up on this, sandy embankment. We started at the top and then like laughed our way down and melted down this embankment for like 6 hours, getting sunburnt and just dying laughing before we like sort of came to at the water. We're like, we can't keep going. We're going to drown. We should probably like
back it up a little bit.
Fight gravity a little bit here. But that was like one of the few purely recreational. And you can say there's something very healing about laughter, but it was just like laughing on psychedelics, belly laughing for hours. But that was not every experience. So I had a little bit of that, but I couldn't be that guy that does that full time.
I think it's a time and place and a stage in life thing that you do those, or you find those. I don't know. I mean, people definitely do them periodically and maintain that for a long time. I don't know how well that pans out long term necessarily, but I mean, I found them a little later in life, and I could never do them in a public situation. I was the guy that would just be sitting in the corner thinking, so I wouldn't have been fun.
Yeah.
But I did them kind of just by myself in my backyard as a tool to figure out who I am, what I want out of life.
That would be my approach if I were to be more intentional about it nowadays, because I would find myself in that situation, but I'd feel like the odd duck out because I couldn't get into like the big party going on where probably half or more of the people are tripping too, but they're in kind of a totally different thing. So I relate to that more, I guess, on that subject. Yeah,
that's been my experience with them. I have friends that do them and are the party type, but it was just never, and I never really wanted to do that, because I had some bad trips. Mm-hmm. I think if you're going to do them, that's to be expected, but it was I always went into it with the intention of, I'm doing this to try to find something inside of myself, or take an out of body perspective and see, where am I in this stage of my life? What do I want out of life?
Yeah.
Am I on that path? Is there a path that I need to be finding right now? What does that look like for me?
Yeah. And it's funny nowadays that like the stigma's kind of come off of it quite a bit. and not just from legalization or from decriminalization, but just hearing different types of people talk about their casual use, whether it's the infamous Joe Rogan, just casualizing that to the nth degree with everybody, but just hearing people that are at different places in their life and different places in their career, and that they're not doing it for party's sake, and Navy SEALs and all these different, crazy guys who've been through some crazy stuff that, talk about it openly and tap into different inner deep emotions in their life and in their heart that they wouldn't have got there otherwise. So it's kind of cool to just see it not be such a stigmatized, and not even like a negative stigma as much as it's not all, tie-dye, long hair and tinted glasses stuff. It's like there's people dealing with some real stuff that are using it to get through it. So
yeah, especially like you said, MDMA for like Navy SEALs or guys that have seen combat has been huge. And I think Joe Rogan, to his credit, has been the proponent for a lot of that changing.
Yeah.
Just going out on his podcast and talking about it. I mean, I was hesitant for a while to talk about it on here just for that same reason, the stigma attached to it. But
I didn't plan on coming here to talk about it.
We were going to talk psychedelics.
There we are.
That was not on my list of things that we were going to discuss. But
it kind of fell into place. I guess it makes sense because if we're, talking about my life and how it's got from, growing up to somehow building houses, it fits in there. I mean, it's that played a role in my life. And yeah, I definitely have had some different ups and downs in life. And I got to give credit where it's due as far as, things that caused me to shift directions on how I treated people and how I care about people. And I can say pretty confidently that even building houses right now, I still reflect on just emotional awareness that was built up from that, or just at least made aware by that more so just about my decisions and the effect that they have on people's homes and, what the process and the experience that they go through when they have a home built, and just respecting that it's not a non-emotional thing to have, your life savings or something close to that put into a project that is something that you'll live and maybe die in one day. So it's a real thing. It's not just a job. So it's important, I think, to be emotionally intact and have kind of your wits about you in that way.
Really not just a job. I mean, you're building people's dream homes. These are the things that, people work their life for, save up a lot of money and say, okay, this is going to be my crown jewel. This is where I'm going to live. This is my home.
Yeah.
And you're bringing that to life.
Yeah. It's a thing that can make you feel a lot of pressure. It'll make you feel a lot of things, a lot of pressure, a lot of excitement. You feel honored, scared sometimes. Like the build we're on right now is one that scared me a few times as far as there's so many different puzzle pieces in it that have to go into place correctly and have to just all come together. So there's a wide gambit of things that, go on emotionally with building any house, let alone, ones that are kind of pushing your abilities.
Where are you guys at with this house currently?
We're at the point where the bank is nipping at our heels to finish it. So we're at the finishing phase. It was set to wrap up in September, and then with changes and additions primarily, and yes, there's been a few setbacks and changes that are, not planned. We're trying to do everything we can to finish it by the 1st. Excuse me. We're trying to do everything we can to finish it by the 1st, and I don't know if that's going to happen. We might get to a point where we just need to get a final inspection when we still have little doorknobs and such, or just little touch-ups and such to do, because there's 100% complete, and then there's, complete enough to get the CO, the certificate of occupancy. And in the middle of this, I decided that I wanted to get my landscaping license, because I feel like that has been kind of a blank spot in construction around here. Maybe it's just my perception, because fast forwarding through psychedelics, through college, through all that good fun stuff, working at Friesen for 4 years, we would see the home completed and then hand them the keys at the point where they have basically a roughly skidded out lawn and say, good luck, hope you love your home. And meant it. I mean, and we'd come back to it after a year or so, just driving by, showing family or friends or whatever, just out of curiosity. And there's usually a nice lawn and some landscaping, but it just felt like you build a 5-star home and then leave it up to them and whoever they can find around town or whatever to landscape the place. And there's capable landscapers around, but we had another landscaper follow us. We didn't design it into it, but we had a more close conversation of them following our build to landscape it. And I would just say it didn't go perfect, and nothing ever goes perfect, but it probably went on the side of not great. And I felt pretty responsible for that, even though it wasn't our subcontractor. We weren't marking them up and like overseeing it, but I felt pretty just responsible for leaving them in what I thought was like 100%. Like it went great. The communication was awesome. We executed the build. They were thrilled with us. We were so happy. And then we come back and they weren't. And it was a contractor that we had introduced them to that, again, we didn't mark up, we didn't oversee it. So we didn't like take on that responsibility, but I just decided that, there's no hard feelings. It does look good. They're working it out currently. And I just feel like they're, especially on a property, like where there's a full on, acre or two that's surrounding a big, beautiful home, you have to put a lot of thought into the infrastructure for landscaping, whether it's timers and just like the network, like veins in a body of pipes that have to go throughout the whole property to bring water everywhere. And it kind of sucks to come back to a build after that and try to drill through concrete and try to know where everything's at. And, there's no room on the panel for extra, lighting over here. And there's there isn't enough forethought into that. And we haven't integrated that into our custom builds enough. But I guess just decided, instead of trying to integrate someone else into it, let's just get our own license and let's start doing our own landscaping. So said all that to say, as we're finishing getting the final, we're already moving with the landscaping on this project. So we're building out the road. We are, planting. This is like 6 acres worth of landscaping. So it's a lot, but we had someone else do the design. So we're following someone else's design, even though sure, we plan on probably bringing that in house at some point. But it's interesting because we're hitting the finish line with the house, but also at the same time putting a different hat on. Like, okay, but now we're still having to push the pace and still push to get this thing finalized, but also start this, like, I don't want to say delicate process, but a different type of mind, because it is more artsy and a little more free flowing, because you can have a design, but you still fudge plants around and get the angles just right and space things just right and just differently. So it's an interesting feel, because we're used to just taking the builder hat off, shaking hands and walking away. But so it's fun and it's exciting, because I think that all the guys love to, pour concrete and run machines and dig holes and get their hands dirty. And it's kind of nice going from crawling around doing like intricate little wood puttyings and sanding and keeping the floor clean to like get out there and dig a 4-foot hole and stick a plant in it and water it. And yeah, so I think the guys are liking it. I'm liking it. It's fun.
It's almost like you're getting the project 95% and then passing it off and hoping someone else can dial in that last 5. It's obviously not, because you guys are doing the house. And so your project's done. But if you think of the property as a whole, or like a painting, you're doing most of it, and then you're trusting somebody else to come in and finish up that last little bit. You're hoping, okay,
exactly.
Can you finish this picture for us?
Right.
And then if it's not 100%, you're like, oh shit. Obviously, it's not on you guys, but still, you're feeling that a little bit.
Yeah, and even just the simple things of them being responsible for, or a contractor, landscaping contractor being responsible for drilling holes all over the place for a fence, or digging holes for trees and things like that. I mean, when we dig and do trenching throughout the whole property, we'll zoom out with the drone and take pictures at different angles and mark it down. And sure, that's useful to someone else, but we're the ones that like laid the pipes there. So we will really try to not hit them, and we'll really try to, set ourselves up for success in the future. And it's, to me, just a more cohesive process through and through, as far as factoring it ahead of time, putting sleeves in concrete walls that otherwise you'd be trying to jackhammer later, and you don't have to, worry, I guess. I mean, of course, things can go wrong and things can be, you cannot have the foresight for absolutely everything, but it feels good to have that worked in way sooner in the progress, or in the process.
Well, sometimes things go wrong and it's out of your control. Like, that was one of the cool things I actually really liked about your guys' 3rd episode, was that there was some quality control issues with the windows. Mm-hmm. You guys kept that in. It's like, hey, this is slowing down our progress, but obviously we didn't make the windows, so we're betting on this company.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it came through, that they worked.
It worked out fantastically. And I have nothing negative to say about Sierra Pacific Industries. They're huge around here. They have a whole history with Humboldt and with this whole part of California. They've grown to be an incredibly large company. And the owner, Rhett Emerson, is the largest, last time I checked anyway, but that doesn't change fast, the largest landowner in all of the United States, as far as owning the most acres of land. And so naturally, it's not a company you also want to make enemies with. So we definitely had to think about how to approach the subject. But as far as putting it into like an episode that we plan on having out in the public forever. But I will say they gave us nothing after the fact to be sour about, to be disappointed about. Their follow through was excellent. Their willingness to come out and not try to nickel and dime it, because once they saw sort of a systematic issue, for one, they were grateful because they brought out their people that were in charge of whole floors of people in the manufacturing and were showing them, hey, this is the product that's coming out. And it was all minor. It was not, windows being just hacked together in some horrible way. It was a minor defect in how they were gluing or marrying two windows. Like a mold unit is a window where it's actually, say, a bigger rectangle mold to a smaller rectangle. And it looks like one window, but they have to come together and have this U-channel type of aluminum like snapped into place. And ideally, they measure it, cut it, touch it up, and then snap it into place. And what looked like what was happening is they were running it long, grinding it in place with a little grinder, and then not touching it up. So you see this tiny little silver edge and all these little nicks where their grinder was just like hitting, the edge of the aluminum thing. And they at first kind of mentioned maybe touching it up with some spray paint. And we were just very hesitant to accept anything like that, because you don't have a window order that big and then show up with some spray paint to
finish it,
kind of fudge it a little bit.
Yeah.
So once they came out and they saw that and they recognized that there was some issue with that was a repeat issue on all the windows or most of the windows, they came out, and as soon as they'd see a group of them where there was one or more, they just said, okay, this whole group was just redoing this side. And then they'd see another group. And then eventually they were just like, okay, so we're just going to bring you a new batch of windows, the whole order, and they're going to be perfect. And then they did. They brought a whole batch of windows and they were perfect. So that's not a small task for any company, and they did it lickety split. I mean, it was in the middle of winter that we're putting these windows in, trying to keep this house or get this house dry. And we were like, holy crap, is it going to be another, 26 weeks or something that it originally took? And they had the new order there in 2 weeks.
Oh, that's cool.
Which a little bit puts in perspective, like how much, they can crank through as far as,
if they want to.
Yeah, if they want to. And just the sheer, because we know what that window order cost. It was the cost of that window order was bigger than some of our previous house builds, if that puts it in perspective. And then so you start thinking, okay, if they can crank out, a large window order like that in two showed up in 2 weeks. So it was like packaged up within maybe 10 days. Like they can do some gross at the end of the year. Excuse me. They can put through some numbers. So,
but I'm sure some of that was them wanting to rush it through. There was probably a little bit of overtime involved in that to just say, okay, let's right this wrong here.
Oh yeah. But yeah, it definitely just makes you slow down for a second and go, okay, so they can, in 10 days, they can, around $250,000 window order. So they can do that in 10 days. What if they did that for 100 days in a row? Okay, they'll carry the zero. Holy crap, they can, and that's with one department. But yeah, that's what happens when you own, I don't know if it's millions of acres, but it is probably millions of acres. It is a lot of trees. And so they're very thrifty. They have a really thrifty and nifty setup where they're set up here in the East Coast and they sell their common East Coast wood that's basically, scrap wood over there, firewood, over here for top dollar. And then stuff like Doug fir that you chop down the backyard because it's in the way, you sell it over to the East Coast where they don't have it and it's like gold. So they're very smart at like selling the common materials to each other. Yeah, they're incredibly smart. So again, not a company to make enemies with. But yeah, they also could afford to make it right. And that ties into a whole different rabbit hole of, respecting when a company is incredibly expensive. But it's because they also respect that, or they understand the fact that stuff still goes wrong and they still have to write checks when things go bad. And they still have to be able to afford to make things right. So that's one of the arguments we make sometimes is that, like, yeah, we can build your house for $500,000 or you can have someone else that cuts it way closer to the actual cost. And you might be thrilled that the owner of the company is willing to just pay himself $20 an hour to swing a hammer the whole time. But the minute something goes wrong, he has to actually be able to afford to come back and fix it. You have to actually have money in your bank account to come back yourself or pay guys to go back there and fix issues. And at the end of the day, of course, it's nice to not have to just make the fat cut and move on to the next one. But there is always something that has to tap into your, piggy bank and deal with. So that's kind of the argument that we often come back to, is like, we are not the cheapest, but we don't want to be the cheapest because we do want to be able to afford to make things right because things go wrong.
Yeah, it's that trade-off. You can get it done fast and cheap, but it's not going to be good.
Yeah.
And if you want it fast and good, well, it's going to be expensive.
Yeah, can't have it all.
Yeah. So you just got to realize what you're paying for. And especially, I mean, what was the total on this project? It was a couple million, right? For this house?
It was 3.1-ish to start, and there's been a lot of additions and changes, and it's right at the 4 mark now. And it's a lot of numbers to manage. I'll say that, because you like to think that you build a house for $1 million and then you pocket 900,000 of it, but it's not the case. A great construction company can net 10, maybe 15% if they're really, really sharp at the end of the year. So that is a lot of checks in, and it's a lot of checks out, because you can get one check from the bank that is $250,000 check, and you're going, cool, I got money in the bank. But then you might have to send 248 of that out the door within 30 days. Or what's even worse is when something in the project, or something just in life, not necessarily this project, causes you to have to start forking those bills out because you're maintaining your relationships and you're making sure all your subcontractors and suppliers know that they're taken care of and they're prioritized, because they don't want to act as a bank either. They don't want to be floating your bills, so you make sure they're paid, but then you're going, okay, bank, come on, hurry up. But they have their, their red tape, and they have their things, the hoops they have to jump through, and they have to inspect the home to make sure that whatever you're invoicing for has actually been done, so that you're not over invoicing and you're not getting out ahead of yourself, because they want to be able to, hypothetically in a all hell breaks loose scenario, if they take possession of the house because something went horribly wrong, they don't want more invoiced than what the place is worth. So if you go invoice $1 million and you're halfway through the house, then something happens, whatever, everything goes horrible, and the bank possesses a house that's been, paid $1 million out, but it might be worth half of that. So
yeah, they don't want to be caught holding the bag.
Yeah, they're careful. So it's a balancing act. The numbers is a very, very meticulous thing, especially when things are being added to it, because our whole system is really, really methodical as far as the organization, what the numbers are, and what the reality of what those numbers mean. Like, we have a 6-inch thick binder for this one job that has tabs for every single doorknob and every single paint color and every single choice and every single disclosure about concrete cracking. And every single time there's a change, you have to go back into your folder that says, electrical fixtures. It's no longer this lamp. Pull that out, put a different one in. We have a Foreman copy that has less. That's my office copy I'm referencing. Then we have a Foreman copy that's that same binder, but just has less numbers, so that if a curious subcontractor starts flipping through, oh, what's the sheetrock bid? So there's more protected, a more protected view, so to speak. But when there's there's a heavy amount of changes and additions to a project, all of that needs to stay up to date, needs to stay accurate. My books need to stay accurate. So I would say that's been the single biggest challenge and single biggest obvious point of growth in this job, is that, without saying a dollar amount, there's been over 70 individual change orders, whether it's, upgrade the knob by $20 or, add a gigantic wine cellar, pour and finish out the whole basement into something really cool. And every single one of those things needs to be reflected in my books, in the book, we call it the Bible of the job, the binder, and then get communicated to every single person whose plan has changed. The electrician can't put this there anymore. The plumber now has to put a drain here. Your carpenters have to take this wall apart and put it back together. So that has forced me to create systems for all that. So I have a whole Excel spreadsheet that I've sort of custom built during this time, because at first it was just a list. Like, we're on change order 8. Cool, at least I have them written down somewhere. It's not just a sticky note. But now it's all color coded to where there's the name, there's the status of it, there's the price amount, the status being like if it's been completed or not, the status of if it's in QuickBooks, and the status of it's been billed for. Because the worst thing is when you have a change order like that and you get an approval for it, you pay guys to do it, you buy the material for it, and then your mind goes somewhere else because you have something else to do that's really important. And then you come back to it 2 months later and go, holy crap, I forgot to bill for that $10,000 thing. And then it's a different conversation, because they're kind of past the point where they feel like they paid for it, and they already have it, and it's already there. It's been there. It's got dust on it. So part of the system is like keeping that fresh and keeping it like, hey, that change order needs to be billed for in QuickBooks like needs to not get no steps missed. So
yeah, you can't fall behind.
Yeah, so I will say it's going to be very difficult for any build after this one to push that system to its capacity, because it's a full-on little program.
Has this been the most extensive build that you guys have done today?
By far, yeah. I mean, it's close to, what is it, 2.5 times what our like previous biggest build was, dollars wise. Square footage wise, no, but with the budget comes complication, because building a big rectangle is, big expensive rectangle, say for $1 million, is far easier than building a $5 million rectangle that's the same size, because it's not going to be just more expensive sheetrock and paint. It's going to be like custom features. And for example, we just had a toilet it's a wall mount toilet where the tank lives inside the wall, so you have to install part of it during the framing phase. And God bless our sheetrocker, we love him to death, but one of their guys had poked a couple holes into it and not said anything. And everything was pressure tested back then, because that wasn't a pressurized part. That's just a tank. So the only time you actually put water in it is when you go to install the finished toilet.
Oh, no.
Which is after insulation, which is after tile, which is after everything. And it's like you're carefully placing this throne onto the wall, onto a very expensive toilet as it is. It's almost $10,000 toilet. And then you go to like fill it up, and we have water coming through our can light on the lower floor. So you pull the wall open and do whatever you have to do to stop it and dry it out and fix it and retile it and fix it and put it all back together. And
yeah, that's not what you want to see.
It's not ideal, but
yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like, that wasn't a possible mistake with a normal toilet. There's mistakes you can make with normal toilets, but not that one. There's no tank in the wall. There's no jug of water with 3 gallons in it sitting inside every wall that you can't access unless you take the tile off. So,
and you gotta mentally make sure that you're not hitting that as you're doing the work.
Yeah. So that's just one small example of just where this same square footage of home could have been built for probably pretty reasonably, like $800,000 or $1 million to get the same just raw square footage. Of course, it wouldn't be the same home whatsoever, but with taking that same square footage and pumping that kind of budget into it, everything is different. Everything is framed different, comes together different. Like the moment frames, that's it's a fancy word for big pieces of steel to keep your house from falling over in an earthquake. And it was the funniest thing. JT and his crew were actually out. When was the earthquake? Yesterday? Or was that 2 days ago now? And we were talking about moment frames, because he was asking me like, okay, let's get some interview conversations going about, different features on this home that make it unique. What are some of those? And I was telling him moment frames. They're these big, huge pieces of steel. Excuse me. They're these big, huge pieces of steel that bolt down to gigantic icebergs of concrete in the foundation under the house, support the weight of the flooring system, and then have a second beam up here that makes up the opening for like our biggest door in the house, which is a 10 by 21 foot slider door. And the point is that if that was all just wood, earthquake happens and that whole thing just racks side to side and all your glass breaks and everyone's sad. So 2 minutes after explaining that that's what we're going to interview about, in about 20 minutes as he was setting his stuff up, we were all going, holy cow, like, are we okay? Holy crap, it's an earthquake. And like, I wish we would have somehow had the interview going, because we had it set up with like the big glass in the background, the doors all sitting there. And you could see during the earthquake, all the glass was like doing the wiggles. And
it would have been a great shot to have on camera.
It would have been pretty, it would have looked like CGI, because like, how could you land that up? But we were like 2 minutes off. Next time.
Yeah. Keep that in the back. Well, hopefully not next time, right? You don't want an earthquake
right.
Job, but
not ideal.
Cool footage.
Yeah.
Man, what about work hours or man hours in terms of this job? How does that stack up against previous ones?
About 3 times as much. We have an interesting system at our office that keeps track of that, and we started it out with over 9,000 man hours. And so we actively, like in a physical whiteboard, we're kind of doing we're jumping back into something called Buildertrend. That's a full electronic, whatever app for job site management, job costing, and
kind of track
all that
everything.
Good stuff. Yeah. But for now we have a system that has all that on a wall, and it helps us keep in real time, like how, or not in real time, but a basic, 7-day offset of where hours are actually at throughout the whole job. But yeah, going on 15, 16 months now, we are deep into it in the man hours. It's been a journey.
Yeah,
and we're ahead. We're not behind man hours wise, but that's been the dance the whole time. Is we have 8,000 allotted to us, and we're at like 7,992. So don't make mistakes.
Yeah, keeping track of that.
Yeah, it's fun.
How hard is it to accurately estimate that? Because obviously, like with the water tank, you're gonna have
done it.
Oh, really?
No, I have a sales guy, Lane. He came from Friesen, so we didn't really get into that. But Friesen, where I worked at, coming off the mountain, that's where I learned how to build a house, and then got my license, started doing my own thing, and back in 2022, I think is when Russell, the owner of Friesen, contacted me. So it was only after having my license for about 2 years. And he said that he's moving his company more in the direction of manufactured homes because he was kind of doing both. Or not kind of doing both. He was building like banger custom homes and selling manufactured homes to give people kind of both menu options, and decided he wanted to sell the custom home side of the company. So that's, trucks, trailers, systems, their whole computer system and job organizing system. And that the whole binder system wasn't something I created, and didn't sell me the people. You're not allowed to do that. It's illegal. But
you can't sell clients?
You can't sell humans.
What is a human?
Human.
Oh, human. Oh, the actual. Oh, okay. I'm thinking client side, like potential people that are booked out.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, I mean they did sell.
You can't sell humans. Yeah,
you
they
can't sell
outlawed
humans.
that.
That's a word. There's a human traffic. Something
yeah,
like
something slavery women in there to it.
But
different era.
But Lane was one of the humans that decided to come along with me. That was part of the deal where we sort of worked it out to where he has an expected pay and salary and blah blah blah. But he's got 13 years of design, sales, closing in like a shark on these jobs and pricing them out. So I've never done that.
Shout out to Lane.
Yeah, he's a killer. He's a pit bull when it comes to that. And he had to work hard for this one because that is a whole rabbit hole of a story to get into. But this build was basically in the hands of another local builder that worked hand in hand with the architect and the owner to make this thing happen. And kind of the classic thing happened. I wasn't there and I didn't hear it firsthand. So this is all third-hand information. So take it with a grain of salt. But my understanding of it is that the classic architect versus contractor thing happened where owner and architect are together saying, build me $1 million, design me $1 million house. And then the architect says, oh, this will be cool. This will be cool. This should all be $1 million. And then it gets sent off to bid or sent off to a specific contractor. And after it went through, I've heard so many stinking stories about different people that took a crack at it. I've heard it of 8 different local contractors and even some guy from Oregon that all, aside from one that said it was only $1 million house when it should have been 3.5, all said it was $4 million house in this case, said that it was gonna just be way more than what the budget allowed for. So Lane got introduced in the conversation one way or another because they heard of Friesen, they heard of Lane and his magical abilities to make projects happen, and that was right when that part of their company was being purchased by us. So he got a hold of them and they had got a hold of Lane. He got a hold of the project and the plans and took a look at it, and with his experience and with his familiarity with more custom construction and more of this type of construction than maybe some other builders, was able to flat out say, this needs to be redesigned. It needs to be engineered by a completely different engineer. And so we did that. He did that with our engineer, Ontiveros Engineering, that does surveying and civil engineering and structural engineering. And long story short, was able to bring it to the budget and make the whole thing happen. So that was a whole year plus process of taking the finished product and reverse engineering it, hypothetically speaking, and then actually re-engineering it and making it happen. So I don't know is the short answer how to do that level of it. I mean, I can tell someone a rough square footage to build a house, but to actually go to that degree, to look at a finished complete product that's that big of a beast and pick it apart and put it back together and somehow change the budget to something that's feasible for the owner and the bank to work that out and allow the owner to then run like the wind and bring as much money as he wants to the table to keep it changing and morphing and making cool things happen to it to still make it just crazy custom. But getting it worked out with the bank and the owner was just a monumental task that I am not the guy for that. And it's not a position of the company that I will pretend that I want to do or can take credit for. So
that's why you have a good team around you.
Yeah. Well, he's a linchpin. He's the definition of a linchpin employee, where if if Lane goes, like we got to rethink some things. So it would be a task. Don't go anywhere, Lane.
Yeah, right. You don't want him hearing that. He's going to come tomorrow to work and say, "Hey, man,
he knows it.
I think we're talking about a raise here."
He's got a good setup. He works remotely over in Trinity County. He's on a solid salary and has all the freedom in the world to do what he wants, how he wants, when he wants. And if there's work there at the end of the day, then he's done his job. And I don't baby him. I don't hold his hand. I don't look over his shoulder, and
just let him
do what he does. He gets paid well to do it. So he's stoked.
I didn't know that. I didn't realize you guys, there were other people that were bidding on that contract. I thought it was just picked up by you guys.
I've heard a lot of situations, different contractors that wouldn't bid on it because it was too big, which is totally understandable. If I didn't have the experience around me and the boost that I got from the freeze and purchase that involved systems, because it's building a house like that is not about how to swing a hammer and how to stand walls, because any contractor can do that. It's all about how, not all, but it's way more about just managing money than people realize. And without actual systems to account for things and keep track of the cost of things and not die in the middle of a build because you have to pay money that you don't have yet, then you can fail 1,000 times, by just the money managing aspect of it. So that's not something to be taken lightly, I guess.
Yeah, you don't want to be mid-build and realize you way undershot it, and you don't have the money to finish this thing.
That's actually one of the stories that we heard, oddly enough. I will not say his name, but I don't know the guy either personally, but the owner had reached out to a billion different people to try to get this thing built. Do you know a guy? Do you know a guy? Are you the guy? Are you the guy? And one of the contractors that he went to apparently charged him to do like a full-on bid, which it is quite the project to bid. So some people do charge to bid, and came back at a really, really low number that was less than half of what the price ended up even being. And the owner is a very mature, very, whatever word means, seeing far away from now, not like narrow-minded, and just said, "Thank you, have a great day," because you don't accept, and he knew that you don't accept a bid that is significantly lower than what it takes to build a house under the whole I'm going to make him do it, because that's way below cost. But that can be an equal mistake too, is like so far underbidding something that you just have no hope for making money on it. So
guy might have been desperate. It's like, we just got to get this, and then try to work something out with the owner and get a little more money midway through.
Yeah.
That's one of those situations where that earthquake hits, and then you start to see the structure start toppling over, and you realize, guess there were some strings attached to this low bid. Right. You don't want to see that happen.
Yeah, no kidding. And then in having the earthquake, it was not a crazy one for around here, but it does make you instantly pause and go, okay, like it was engineered for it. And we put the bolts in, and we did the right amount of concrete, and we did all the things. So you have a moment there where you're going like, all right, do your job. And then nothing broke, and you're going, okay, cool. We made it through that one. We'll see what a 9 does eventually, maybe, but it was a solid 7, and I guess it did okay. So
what was the decision to film this one with the YouTube channel and everything? Had you had that idea prior to this build? Had you been shooting anything on site or cutting clips for social media? Well,
we've always been into filming. We've always been into the creative side of things. Alex Bateman, my unofficial, but foreman, he is incredibly creative. He does like the social media and like the filming for our church that we go to in Eureka. And he's very much like into that. He does like private shoots for people doing photography. He did some, maternity stuff for my wife and I, and he just has that creative, lens eye type of thing that you want to have besides being a killer, carpenter. And so we've always been into it. And I don't even know what triggered this specific project as much as just realizing that it's kind of a special moment in many different ways. I mean, biggest job of our lifetime by far. A very special job because of what the owner went through to get to this point, and the freeze and purchase. And there's just 1,000 different things that all seemed so capturable. And the whole project started out, and this is one of, Justin's, I don't want to say, complaints about it, but just a fault of mine that I've had is that it's changed, because the beginning process the beginning conversations about this film project was like, let's make a legacy video that just is something we can show our kids in 50 years. That's just like the coolest thing ever. And then as it went on, as we, got into more conversations about it, and as Lane got involved, it was like, this needs to be something that's marketable, that's helps you get more builds. And so the conversation shifted into a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And so I think it started off with just trying to capture what in the heck was going on, because a lot was happening in a few, short months or years. And I think that, like I mentioned, that communication class in high school I took, that I definitely had a certain place in my heart for capturing cool moments. I mean, I grew up snowboarding, would always GoPro and make little edits and little skate videos and stuff. And I thought there was something special about whoever's performing the sport, for example, probably does it because they're passionate about it. The snowboarder, goes and becomes a pro, not because he wants to be famous or wants to make money, because he's passionate about it. But then there's the videographer and the editor, or maybe they're the same person, that can somehow capture how cool that person feels about what they do, whether it's with music and angles and the shots and the textures and all that good stuff. If they can somehow capture that person's passion and that person's feeling about what they do, because that person's too busy doing it, usually, most of the time. There's some guys that can do it all and they're crazy for being able to, be the
juggle all that.
Yeah, like awesome framers. He can, from what I understand, he does all of his own filming, all of his own building, all of his own editing. And sure, he's not making like Netflix cinema stuff, but it has an incredible way of capturing that passion. So I've always recognized for a long time that it's a special thing to be able to take just some special passionate activity, like building a house, to me is very, very special, and trying to capture how much that means to me, how much that means to the owner, how much that might mean to the guys, and make something that's you can watch later, make something that hopefully at the end of watching an episode or a series like that, you feel something, trying to make something that has a certain reaction feeling wise for people.
Well, I think the passion definitely comes across in your guys' videos. I mean, I'm a fan. I've enjoyed the videos. I think they're great. I think it's a really cool progress tracking story and a heartfelt story of you guys building this house. And I can't remember, I've recommended it to a number of different people, and I can't recommend it enough for people that haven't seen it. Check out your YouTube channel and kind of get invested in the storyline and get invested in you guys.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a big learning experience for sure. There's been some drama throughout how it goes about. There's been a ton of growth, because it's terrifying to not have any experience talking on a microphone, or hearing yourself talk on a microphone, or seeing yourself in your body language on video. Or if you're me and you've, eaten a lot of corn dogs in the last couple of years and you're like, oh, who's the fat guy? Oh, wait.
Time out.
That's me. Hold on. And yeah, you're trying to do all that while also keeping like what I just mentioned in mind, the emotions and like the making a special thing, but also like, man, I don't know how to talk on camera. How do you do that? And so there's been a lot of personal growth in the area, and I'm still like at a D+, but at least I'm not at an F anymore with it. And like all of us, and it takes a lot of practice to get used to being on camera and having your work filmed and not working differently because you're being filmed and
not getting in your head.
Yeah. And also creating a normal work environment, or getting rid of that stigma that can sometimes happen. You have 3 or 4 guys with cameras on the job site, and your concrete truck driver who's been driving concrete trucks for 40 years pulls up and goes, what the heck's going on here? And you can tell there's a little bit of like,
what are we doing?
What are we doing here? And that's been something that I think have gotten through really, really well, because most people are excited about it. Most people are like, oh, cool. Yeah, I should.
Probably the first time it's happening for them.
Yeah.
Show up on a job site and there's a camera crew there.
Yeah, definitely. And I think most people are excited about it, and excited by the idea that there's something kind of bubbling in Humboldt. That's something, at least that we feel, there's like, I don't know, something magic there, something special that can grow. And it's not about being famous, not about trying to get the most views. There's just something, I don't know, there's something to capture about, at least I think, about building in Humboldt and Humboldt counties in general.
And it's a great site. I mean, the house location is just a beautiful spot.
Yeah.
So to have that on camera is a plus.
Yeah. I would say, yeah, if you, Humboldt's got a high percentage of that compared to other places. And the more I think about that specific topic, it's like, yeah, if you get outside of city limits, there's almost an unending supply of that in Humboldt, whether you're on the coast or you're deep up 36 in the woods, or out 96 out in, territory out there. It's like there's a crazy amount of places like that here. And that's part of why we absolutely love building here, because it would kind of suck to just, I mean, sure, if you lived somewhere like Kansas, or trying to think of flat places, a lot of places are flat, where it's just flat. You have, house after house after house where they're just on a flat piece of ground. There's just flat ground around it, flat lawn, bring some dirt in and make a little hump. But Humboldt's just terrain, and it's gnarly, and sometimes you get stuck just trying to get to the job site, and it takes equipment to even be able to get your equipment to the place where the equipment works. And
yeah, there was a lot of mud up there for you guys.
Oh yeah, we have, what is it, like $20,000 worth of these big plastic mats that are just 5/8 thick hunks of plastic with grip on them, with hand grips that are just for driving over and trying to place around your job site so that you can walk without getting caked in mud. And yeah, that's just one of the many different things that might not be unique to Humboldt, but it's something that we try to pay attention to and get geared up for, so that building in this pretty gnarly place, we're pretty set up for it. And
building in the winter, you got to be prepared for the rain.
Yeah.
You don't want to truck it.
Yeah. Shout out to Helly Hansen making the best rain gear. We basically wear crabbing gear when we're working, because, the sort of light duty, rainproof or waterproof stuff just doesn't quite cut it. So you got to wear just about crabbing gear when you're working out there. And you're just about swimming when you're out there too some days. I mean, the Trinidad coast is like so brutal. There's hardly any sort of trees between you and the Pacific Ocean. And there's definitely some days, there still is, just like the storm, a couple weeks ago, where you're working and you're checking your forecast. And at a certain point, you're like, I don't need to check the forecast. You're watching it from 100 miles out, a black wall where you're looking at the water, and it's like a nice blue color, but there's a black wall over the water that's just the darkness, obviously, but also the rain hitting the water that gives it that texture. And you're like, that's going to be here soon, buckle up. And then you just watch it, and then you just get absolutely hammered by it. And yeah, some days suck, but what sucks worse is sitting at home collecting unemployment or not collecting anything and going, I'm waiting for the sun to come out, man. I want to go get to work. So I'll still choose the rainy days over that. My guys still criticize me. I find office days more often when the rain's out there, but that's bills got to be paid too.
Yeah, it's part of the job, right? Part of being the boss. You gotta suck it up. There might be a heater in there, but it's just part of the nature.
Yeah, and sometimes it is planned in the sense that, like, if I know I have somewhat seasonal stuff, or there's audits coming up and whatever, that's like the end of the year stuff and whatnot. Like, if it can be done in the fall when it's kind of nice still, or it can be done closer to the end of the year when the rain sucks, like, choose the rainy days sometimes. Can't do it too much, because you got to like watch the morale too. Because if you're Mr. I'm only outside in the sun, then
guys get a little upset.
Disgruntlement may occur.
Do you think this is something you guys will do moving forward continuously?
Working in the winter?
No, not. I would assume you'd be doing that.
Sorry.
No, filming. Do you think that this has been kind of a proof of concept for you guys?
Yeah, I think so. We're definitely still trying to figure out just what's sustainable, because it's expensive to pay for proper talent. And with iPhones nowadays, you can pull off a lot, but you can't replace a good editor. The skills, for example, that someone like, Justin or Tex or JT, and I know they have different strengths in different areas, so I don't mean to like lump them all into one pile, because they all have different strengths, but you can't replace a human like that with skills with an iPhone, but you can replace, not quite replace, Justin's going to get mad at me for saying this, but like a $5,000 camera with an iPhone, if you're only shooting for a certain level of quality or a certain level of like cinematography with it. And I know nothing about cameras, so take that with a grain of salt too. But we are definitely doing more just basic tripoding and selfie filming and just talking about the process and doing a vlog that we're doing every week at this point. And Alex is filming a lot of it, just about most of it, and kind of orchestrating that and doing all the editing for it. And we're going to take some different shifts in that and try different styles. And it's not all about viewership. We're trying to also create something special there that's a little bit lower quality, a little more rough and tumbler and whatever, but
a little more personal.
Yeah. And a little more in the nitty gritty as far as just seeing the monotonous details and hearing more like in-depth explanations. But yeah, as far as the series goes, I would love to keep something like that going, but it's just bloody expensive. If you want to have, because we have talked about that, getting to the end of this project, it sets a high bar for many things, including, the obvious build, but also capturing a build like that. it's like, how do you go from that to just filming nothing, or creating the sort of perception that you just dropped off the face of the earth because you just stopped all, media and putting something like that out there. So we want to do something. It's not maybe going to be the same caliber, but we don't know the direction to go with it yet, whether it's to keep someone or create basically an in-house employee out of it that might not be at quite the Justin level, but that might be just more sustainably, priced. Because I would love to have someone like Justin, for example, like full time, where they just 40 hours a week, they're just wearing my sweatshirts, wearing my hats, they're W-2 employees, and their job is just to do that. So we might explore something like that. But yeah, that was a long-winded answer of saying I don't know. We would love to, but we don't know what it's going to look like yet. So
you guys are still pretty early in the process.
Yeah.
I'm sure things will take shape as the other episodes release, as you guys kind of wrap
for
up
now,
the project.
just filming what we can ourselves for now. So at least the film has been got. The moments have been secured in the time capsule of the iPhone. So if that's all we get for now while we kind of work into the next thing, then great. But part of it definitely, at least in my heart, is tied to the uniqueness of a job. We have some interesting builds coming up that are maybe not quite the level of technical or emotional as far as what the owner had to get through to get it, but it's still going to be a very special thing. And so we are trying to figure out a way to make it make sense, whether it's with marketing or something, because you don't want to just blow the money on it necessarily. Like, we're not making money from YouTube. We're not making money from Instagram. We make money when we build houses, and we have one potential customer that has been brought to the equation somewhat from YouTube, that someone kind of recommended. They watched them and they already had another contractor, and they said, oh, well, I want them to build it. They're capable and they're whatever. So that like tickles your heart a little bit. And the minute you start getting like legit signed contract home builds where they write in or fill in on the box that says, we found you on YouTube, then it's like, okay, dump the money into it. But we're not there yet. So we have to decide what does make sense for now.
Yeah, like you said, it is expensive. And to the credit of editors, I mean, you could film a great story, have great footage, and just put it together in a terrible format. Mm-hmm. It just does not click. It doesn't resonate for whatever reason. All the other pieces are there, but the actual articulation of the story through the editing process just didn't pan out.
Yeah.
Like, those guys are different breed.
Yeah, it's a whole thing that I do not understand. And that's been one of the powerful components to really learn about, for one, and then also protect, because there's been some drama, as I mentioned, with how the whole filming thing has gone, because we had Tex and Justin doing it together, and then they had a bit of a falling out. So we have to still execute and still do it. But there was a certain, synergy, whatever, that worked with them, even though it was rocky at times with them, with each other. But we love them both as individuals, and we wish that could have continued. But I would say at this point, Justin, we're still doing it with him, but he's having to sort of keep that story alive himself in his own brain. And with me not having the experience and not having the reins as far as the control there, I can only participate so much, because he's got to just grind that out, and he's got to, keep that puppy alive, keep
breathing into the fire.
Yeah. Keep the story cohesive, and keep it raw, and keep it emotional, and keep it good, and deal with all the different stuff that, comes at him as far as being challenged by now doing it by himself and having to coordinate it and all that. So I think he's doing a fantastic job. And I hope that my whimsical wanting to change and wanting to like add elements here or there gets worked in a way that is helpful, even though I know that my dreamy sort of zoomed out view can kind of throw a wrench in the spoke sometimes. But I am looking forward to seeing how it pans out, and then how we can continue that the story, whatever form it takes, whether it's iPhones on a tripod, or it's filming the next thing with the same amount or more cameras and more production and more money put into it. Because I'd love to do that. I'd love to have a 7-figure marketing thing every single year that just pumps that out there and has a return on it. So we'll see.
I think it's possible. I mean, obviously it's a beautiful house that you guys are working on, but I really think you guys out there on the ground, that's the heart of the story. And I think that translates to any other build that you guys move on to. I think people are going to be attached to you guys and want to see the process of you guys building this house, you know? It'd be a little shack. And I'm sure you guys would put your own flair on it. And I think that would translate well.
Yeah, which is interesting because we're all susceptible to, you know, our egos and wanting to be popular and wanting to be famous and whatever. But the project has never been, in my mind, about me, try to make me seem cool, try to make me seem this way or that way. And that's been, and you'd have to probably hear it from them to have a more authentic perspective on it, someone like Justin or Tex. But I was and am uncomfortable with the idea of being the quote unquote star of the show, because I want the emotions and the specialness of the home build and of this guy's home specifically that went through hell to get this thing off the ground and to a point where he could actually build it, because he has so many obstacles in front of him and we had obstacles in front of us. So I want whatever that's called to be the center of the story. But all of them are going like that's like, you have to tell that and you have to be the face of that. And that's uncomfortable because I don't see this project as like putting me in the spotlight. I see it as putting whatever that is and the company and the build and the art of building in the spotlight. But I guess someone's got to be the storyteller. So I kind of by default become that guy, I guess.
I think you're the medium for that because of that, for that exact reason, that you're not out there trying to be the star of the show, trying to be me, the focal point. I think that's why it resonates so well, is that you are the messenger for the passion.
I'm scared of that.
I would imagine.
It's ugly. Like when I think of,
it's a lot of pressure. You can't think about it.
And I'm not immune. I'm not immune to it. I'm not immune to being egotistical and all that, you know, ugly stuff. But I'm scared of it. Like I'm scared of having my personality changed or my
start reading the comments and then adjusting things.
And trying to act or show or even talk. I talk flat. People are going to listen to this and probably think I don't know how to talk because I don't. Or they watch the show and whatever. I don't necessarily, I don't want to say I don't care what people think about me, but I certainly don't live by it. And yeah, but I'm terrified by the idea of popularity or money or some factor changing me and making me want to live by it.
Corrupting you a little bit.
Yeah. So to be watched out for and to be monitored. And I think the biggest single factor in that is, I mean, I have my faith, and not to discredit that, but like boots on the ground humans, my wife, friends around me that will check you if you're being a jerk.
It's important to have those people.
Yeah. Or if you're being dishonest or you're being disingenuous or whatever it is, that they do it and they do it fast. Because when you start seeing people that have blind spots go down that road, it is, in my opinion, your responsibility to say, hey, dude, you got a blind spot. You got to work on this. And even though it stings and even though it sucks when someone that you love comes to you and says, you suck right now, do better, and hopefully a nicer way. But those are the moments in my life that have been like the most life-changing as far as making you choose, like, okay, I am making someone feel this way. Do I want to continue or not? And hopefully I make corrections wherever it's possible. But I think that's the single biggest factor in watching out for stuff like that, whether it's because of media, fame, YouTube, whatever, or just having your face out there, or just life in general, is having people around you that know how to communicate to you for your own good and trusting them to do that. Because without that, you can get a lot of trouble just being in your own little echo chamber of thinking you're doing it right.
And if you don't have those people, then you start, again, going into the comments and you think maybe those people's advice is valuable and you take that to heart, and then you start tweaking who you are.
Yeah.
And it's just like a slow erosion of you.
Yeah. And like, thank goodness our style isn't, at least as far as I can tell, like contrary to YouTube laws and such, and YouTube, not laws, whatever you call that, the rules.
Yeah, I think you guys are okay.
Yeah. I mean, we're
not really controversial.
I don't think so. But I've seen even great channels and great people that are on YouTube that have to like really shift the way they do stuff because of their politics or their this way or that way, that like has made them who they are, made their channel what it was. So I think in that same vein is I like the fact that our style and our material that we want to put out there is hopefully unique but vanilla enough that we're not feeling that temptation because YouTube says you can't talk about homes on YouTube. You got to figure out something else. Like, obviously that's a dumb one. They're not going to, but there's people that the subjects or the things that they do or want to talk about are not, with the flow of whatever medium like YouTube or whatever platform. So they have to, fight that temptation to like be true to themselves or, bend a knee to the powers that be. So I think we're pretty safe with building homes.
Yeah, I think you guys are in a good
so
nick
far anyway.
for that. Yeah, we'll see. YouTube might turn around tomorrow and write some bylaws on that, but I think about that occasionally, just with the nature of doing this. Obviously, this conversation isn't that controversial, but I've had a few of those. It's just, you got to figure out what's important to you and what values you want to hold on to.
Yeah, and there's a thousand subjects that fall in that category of things that could be controversial, but I think that it's pretty fair to say, at least in my opinion, that no matter what your religion or your weekend practice, whether it's psychedelics or reading the Bible or drinking beer, drinking water, whatever your thing is, like keeping other people's emotions and keeping other people's hearts in mind so that you're not going out of your way to hurt people, or if people have called you out for doing that, if you had a blind spot to it, no matter what you practice, I think, the cliche word love needs to be factored in. If it's your friends, you need to communicate with them like you love them. If it's your family, if it's your coworkers, if it's your, suppliers or people that you work with, I think that no matter what you do and what you practice, you got to care about like what imprint you're leaving on people, because who cares if you're successful and if you have a best podcast on the planet, if everyone leaves a conversation with you with a feeling of like, oh, I suck. Like, he's doing great, but like walking away from a conversation with Nick feeling like, oh, I'm never going to make it because he's made it and he makes me feel like I haven't made it and I'll never make it. And I think that at the end of the day, that's probably far more important than, how big your paycheck is and how big your car is and your truck is and house is and all that good stuff. I don't know how I got on that subject, but
this is a good little
there's my spiel.
Yeah. Clip that. That was perfect. No, it's important. And you don't want to be the guy. This is the idea that I always fall back on. You don't want to be the guy with the fancy mansion. He's got everything he ever wanted, and you're just alone. You're up at the top of the hill and you're alone. Nobody wants to be around you. You don't have any friends. You don't have any family. You've got everything on paper, but it doesn't mean anything. You're at the top of the mountain and nobody can enjoy the view with you.
Yeah, no, that's a scary thought by itself too. And it's, even though I haven't been doing this that long, we've had some success and some good builds and some good profit to be made, but that can sneak up on you too. Like if you build a nice house and you have these outward, and I'm speaking of my own house, we built our own home in Carlotta, and we have these outward things that look like success. They don't see the mortgage bill at the end of the day. They don't see that my truck that, sure, I bought a $5,000 bumper on, the bank still owns that thing. I didn't buy all that stuff outright. Sure, I've bought most of my tools outright, but it's still easy to have those, you can cover the overhead and you can cover the debt to all those different things and still let it get to your head. And still give the people around you the impression that you're all just, you're a made man. It's all paid for. Every money that comes into your pocket stays there, and you just decide 401k versus, Bitcoin investment, whatever. It's not the case. But I think that even just the temptation of letting those things get to your head and those things get to other people's head is a real thing and a real problem. And I think that when you're buying yourself or your family nice things, it's even more kind of pressure on you or onus on you to really watch how you treat people, and not just in your words, but in your actions, because that with being a jerk is worse than having nothing and being a jerk, because the contrast is just that much more abrasive. So I think it's important to keep in mind anyway.
And it's hard too with something like that where, people are never going to see the amount of work that goes into it, especially like building your own house. They're just going to see the finished house and think, oh, it must be nice.
Yeah.
You're thinking, it wasn't nice when it was raining and I was out there pouring concrete.
Yeah, or wasn't nice for, my 10-hour day is at least a 12-hour day for my wife, because, she starts my day, makes my breakfast, makes my coffee. I get babied, I get pampered. And I for one, would have never been able to get where I'm at without her. But then even at the end of the day, she makes us dinner. She does the laundry in general. And I don't do nothing, but I do very little compared to her. And just like you're talking about, not seeing the rainy days, like people aren't seeing the sacrifices that I made on my family to work the 14, 16, 18-hour days to make projects happen 7 days a week sometimes, because you're just excited because I'm in this young, healthy-ish phase of my life where I have energy and I have weekends that I can burn up. But it's not sustainable to neglect your family, and not sustainable to put everything else instead of just plain family time, where you're not being productive and you're not, creating something that's going to make a paycheck tomorrow. And that's something I'm still working on to this day, but definitely have taken some harsh reality checks to get me to slow down a little bit and just decide that at the end of the day, I want my 2-year-old, my 4-year-old to feel like they had enough time with me and not have that repeat of, like, my dad was and is a workaholic still to this day. And I have no complaints about my childhood and my parents. But yeah, I could have gone for less material success and more just time with dada, just hanging out. So with my 2 and 4-year-old, I've tried to really take those cues where we bought my son, my 4-year-old, little electric motorcycle, and he asked for like weeks in a row, "Hey, can we ride after work? Hey, can we ride after work?" Excuse me. And he kept asking. And my wife kind of did one of those checks where she's like, "Hey, I know you're tired. I know this and that, but you really don't want to reach the point where he doesn't ask you, where he just finds something else to do instead." And that crushed me and it shook me. And I was like, holy crap. In the moment, I feel like, oh, I'm tired and I wish he just quit bugging me because I just worked however many days and you just got to bring home the bacon and whatever. But the thought was way more terrifying of him going in his head, I'm not even going to ask dad because he's busy and he's tired and he's worked a long day. I'm just going to go do something else instead. And sure, he's not going to like emancipate himself and move off, but like that has a butterfly effect later on in life. And it's hard to like zoom way back to making every single decision right, but at least having that overall awareness of like, I'm not going to make a long day out of every weekday, and I'm not going to give away every Friday, Saturday, Sunday just because it's important to someone else, and like draw those lines and keep them drawn and redraw them if they get disrespected or if you give them away or whatever. So that's an ongoing practice, and it's an ongoing sort of self-check-in, but also, again, trusting the people around you to go, hey, too many nights, too many long days. Like, is this sustainable? So
yeah, and kudos to your wife. I mean, that's a good reality.
She survived a lot. Still surviving.
Yeah, still going through it. Still in the trenches.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's hard because you're running your own business, so the seductive nature of I have to be working to make more money is always in the back of your head. But at the end of the day, family time matters.
Yeah, and it's especially I'm sure it's this case with any business, but the story that I'm most familiar with contractors is that you are going to work stinking long days for a long time. And then maybe one day you get to the point where you have weekends and you have barriers drawn. And again, that a lot of the credit for that even being halfway put together in my life is in part, a huge part, the Friesen purchase, because their whole system of, Mennonite nerding out on how to run a business for those 12, 15 years all does center around like Saturdays aren't on the table, Sundays aren't on the table, Fridays are more working on the business than anything else because their employees will work Monday through Thursday typically. And that's how we are. So my guys work Monday through Thursday. Outside of basically emergencies, I don't ask them to work Fridays. And I don't think I've ever, one of them's going to watch this and go, oh, remember that Saturday? But I think we've never touched a Saturday, certainly never touched a Sunday. And that, them sculpting their whole business around that and prioritizing that helped me to really kind of get pulled out of that quickly, because it's too easy for me to factor in my man hours and go, well, I'm cheap. I pay myself well now, but I'm cheap in the sense that I'm a fixed cost. So if I work that Friday, Saturday, I didn't pay someone else to do it, and it didn't come out of the overhead extra, but it came out of my personal life overhead, my reserve of family time and my wife's sanity and all that. And so having mature business guys that say, no, you are shooting yourself in the foot, reloading and shooting yourself in the other foot. If you don't stop and draw the line somewhere and figure out how else to take care of those Friday, Saturday, Sunday things, or Saturday, Sunday things by some other means, have an employee do it Friday, hire someone else if you need to take care of it, draw the line somewhere and keep it there, because otherwise you'll ruin your life trying to do it all yourself all the time. So that's the story I'm familiar with, is just hearing about, if you're going to be a contractor, you're going to be your own man, you're going to have to work these crazy long hours. And a certain amount of that's definitely true, but there is a way to not stay in that vein forever and create something that is sustainable. So
there's a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
It's just finding it. Sometimes it's a little challenging.
And having someone else show it to you. Because finding it, I wouldn't have found it myself. I can confidently say very quickly, because it's too easy for me to just get hungry for more and more projects, more ambition, more this, more that. When I worked at Friesen, for the most part, I was single. I wasn't married yet, didn't have a girlfriend, worked 4 days a week, and was borrowing money to flip houses Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And I would work probably just as many or more hours Friday, Saturday, Sunday as the 4 other days. And I loved it. I was addicted to it. It's so fun because I could make a bigger paycheck 3 days a week than I was 4 days a week. And it was all had at once because I could borrow money, get to the end of the project, be still making a W-2 payment, and then flip the house, sell it, and cash out and be stoked. And so that it's just not sustainable with a family. So I have to take less of a cut, pay people to help, pay people to do this, subcontract more of it. And it's a less profitable thing. But what's the trade-off? Do it 7 days a week till I actually burn out and become a single man again and go down that rabbit hole? No thanks. So gotta recognize it somewhere and figure out what is sustainable. And it's healthier anyways, just for your mental health and your physical health, to have specific days to rest, specific days to, I'd like to say work out. Don't quite do that yet, but
it's in the works.
To make time to do things other than profit making things. Yeah. Go ride motorcycles with your son. Go picnic in the redwoods. Go frolic on the beach. Go do something else besides focus, work. Even though there's a great, 40 to 60 hour to do that, but don't do it too much.
Yeah. It's hard to find that balance. My dad was a contractor and was, building houses when I was growing up, building houses, and then also owned a small business on the side. So it was balancing that. So the work ethic there has always been apparent for me, just working, the work aspect. It's been the finding the balance on the other side of that. That's been my progress. Still a work in progress. Yeah. Just realizing you don't have to work 24/7 all the time. Like you can take a breather every now and then.
Yeah. And there's seasons where you really feel like you do, and you might have to, but at the same time, I feel like when you do take the deep breaths and take the moments to back out and sort of evaluate the what do you call it, the sustainability of it, that's when those powerful moments happen of like, you know what, I can burn out eventually doing this, and not just avoiding the train wreck, but how can I actually create something that's more sustainable? Like, do you think Elon Musk builds Teslas with his hands? Or, there's a bajillion different examples of people that have really big things going on that are way bigger than a silly custom home building company that aren't wearing tool bags. And I'm not going to be an Elon Musk. I'm not going to be that type of CEO business owner. And I'm not striving for that. But there is a happy middle ground, I think, that all of us can find, where it's like, do your thing, do your passion, but at the same time, protect your personal life and your personal, time, because you have to have quality of life and your family has to have quality of life to make it worth it. Because then if it's all that work anyways, then like that is life.
And especially if you're working to provide for the family. Yeah. And then you're working so much it starts costing the family.
Yeah.
Well, you're just working against yourself.
Yeah. Then at a certain point, it's like you might be better off just taking unemployment and parking on the couch, because then at least you get family time. And it's kind of a joke, but at the same time, it's like
there's a happy medium somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I get why people take different routes. I think when I worked at Friesen, I had kind of an attitude of, there were several guys that worked there that had their license or let their license expire, their contractor's license, and then got a job, and they're family men and they make a paycheck and they go home. And I had this attitude of like, oh, you failed or you missed it and you whatever, like there was something wrong or something they didn't do right. But looking back at it, I go, oh, they know what their paycheck is. They get 3 days off a week. They get to go hunting, fishing, quad riding, climbing around in trees with their kids. They can deal with the emergency Monday that the boss tells them about, but they're not married to the job during their 3 days off. They get time. They don't have to take that home with them. So that has a lot of value to it. And it didn't click until realizing that I'm at the mercy of whatever emergency the business is facing to have a weekend. Because if it happens, I can call someone and try to have someone else go instead of me to deal with the leaking thing or the issue that's happening. But it's my phone call and it's my issue. And I'm not at a place where I'm willing to turn that over, because that's a different level of having a general manager that is the actual first phone call. And I'm not there and probably might not ever be there. I like that. And I like the, protecting my baby and protecting the business that I've built to this point. So yeah, but I do have a clearer picture of why that's not failure at all to walk away from being your own boss and accept a great paying job where you don't wear it all weekend. So I don't think that I'll do that, and I'm not shooting for that, but I have gained a new level of respect for people that have tried being a contractor and then back off of it, because it's not that they failed. It's not that they can't do it. It's some other factor in life made them value that predictability, sustainability, and sure, luck and failure and all that different stuff absolutely factors in, but I have a new level of respect for the fact that it's not all it's cracked up to be, and you do have to rely on the people around you accepting your sacrifice of time for a certain amount of time. And not everyone's wife is as patient as mine. I probably would have had to pack up my, license and all that stuff a long time ago, way toward the beginning, if she didn't have the seemingly unending supply of patience and willingness, because she saw the light at the end of the tunnel, because she could have very easily way earlier on said, nope, you need weekends. You need to take these kids and be here more than you have been now. But she's had a lot of mercy with me on that subject. So I would not be here. The company wouldn't be here without her. And I mean that to the fullest. Couldn't be truer.
Shout out to her. Yeah, it's about having that support system, man. Having those people around you. Because she's making sacrifices too.
Yeah.
So it's important.
Do you mind if we pause for just a second?
No, we can actually wrap up if you want. We've been in here.
I just want to make sure that it's not heard.
I was going to say, I think it's been 2 hours.
Okay.
We didn't have a hard out here for you.
She wasn't even texting me. We're good. But yeah, I was talking about her. And I was like, wait, was that her buzzing me saying, where are you?
Yeah, the wife's calling. Episode 456. Is there a potential release date in the works, or is that still?
We don't have a release date, but we're working on it. Justin's working on it. It's interesting. We staggered, and this is probably a hindsight 2020 thing, where we staggered structured the episodes according to the phases of the job. And so episode 4 that we're waiting on coming out, I think we included exterior patios in that. And then 5 and 6 were different finishing phases, and then sort of the finale. But because of weather and because of changes, the exterior patios in this have been one of the single biggest changing components as far as adding overall square footage, adding technical lighting throughout it that's underlit, cantilevered steps in the concrete with LED strip lighting. That's caused us to just pump the brakes, figure out what we're doing, repump the brakes because it grew in this direction and that direction, different finishes, different lighting. Oops, winter's here. So then we're trying to figure out how to stagger all these different pours in between all the rainstorms while we're still nearing the end of the house on the interior, but the exterior is chugging along slower than we expected. But episode 4 has a lot of, exterior stuff in it. So said that to say, episode 4 has been hinging on a lot of different things being done that are now finally being done. But episode 5 and 6 are essentially filmed and have all those different parts and pieces for the most part, outside of more personal conversations and interviews that Justin has to do. So they're coming. It's just a matter of getting it all wrapped up. And I think 4, 5, 6 are going to kind of scattershot out pretty quick once we get there. But yeah, we've had a big layover period between 3 and 4. And that's also when, or was it between 2 and 3? But Tex and Justin's falling out happened, not too many episodes ago. So there has been a readjustment and a sort of calibrating of how we do this. So it's getting there. And we're still excited.
I was going to say, I'm excited. I'm excited to see these things.
Yeah, we're all still very excited about it. And I think what the layover period between 3 and 4 has done too is we've all got more comfortable with being filmed while we're working, because we've been doing a lot of it ourselves, and having other companies come out and film us too for separate projects. And I think that the interviews for 4, 5, 6 will be interestingly different from the interviews, say, at 1, because we're a lot more like embarrassed and quiet and red-faced and whatever. Not to say that we're like perfect, but we're just more comfortable, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, and I'm sure the vlogs helped with that too, just being on camera
absolutely.
more, building the reps.
Yeah.
Well, man, I'm excited. I'm excited to see the last 3.
It'll be cool, and I'm excited for it to exist as its own unit, because it is something that we're really, really proud of. And we've already sent them to customers that are, poking at us about maybe building their house, and kind of throwing it their way to say, hey, we're not done with this project yet, but this kind of gives you an insight. And we've heard nothing but awesome feedback from people that are like, this is so special. We're glad that we're hearing that this is, and feeling that this matters to you. What you're doing isn't just like a company that you're going to like stamp it and get it done. So I think that's pretty special to hear a little bit of feedback, but I'm excited to use it. Yes, as a marketing tool, but just as a tool to be able to give to people to say, this is who we are. This is what we do.
This is what you're getting into. This is who you're entrusting with your vision for your home.
While at the same time saying, but we don't have to film it if you don't want us to. Because some people are like, I don't want anyone seeing my front door, my walls, my built-in aquarium. I don't want to see any of that until I open the door and like start taking pictures, which is their right to do. So,
I didn't even think about that perspective, huh?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't even say concern. It's just a point to not ignore, because we can be excitable and we can be really into that. But if someone doesn't want that, then lights out. It's their project. We've not run into that yet, but we just keep in mind that not everyone has to be, and we don't want to make them feel pressured to. We're just extra happy if they're into it.
Yeah, cool little addition.
Yeah, and again, back to the emotional topic, is that because it's so special to people, most people are thrilled by it, because then instead of texting grainy pictures to their friends and family, they're shooting them links going, check out my house being built. Look at this happening. Oh, they have this film crew. And it's fun for them to show off. So I love that. I think that's such a cool thing. And I hope that going forward into future builds, people not only choose us because they feel like they know us from that, but that part of them goes, man, I want my project that's so special to me to be captured in a special way that can then get scattershotted out to the universe to all my other friends and family to see it.
Yeah, well, they have a catalog now of their house being built. How many people can say that?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's already played a factor in like mystery huntings, where we've looked back at footage to try to find things or situations or details that we probably wouldn't have just been filming and taking pictures of. We were looking for. One funny example was the way that some of the schematics for the moment frames contradicted the construction drawings for them, for how the things were actually built. And we had some drone footage during the framing phase, and the night before the moment frames were to be craned into place, there are these big rectangle shaped plates that make up the footings of these big, huge moment frames, and they have to be oriented, north to south. But we remembered the fact that some of the original sort of non-construction drawings of it had them east to west, even though the moment frame was north to south. And then in the middle of the night, I like dug back into our footage and looked at a drone shot and zoomed way in, because it was, nice drone footage. I mean, they're all pretty nice nowadays, and saw they were oriented the right way, and I went to bed. But there's been little moments like that where we're like, dude, we're glad we had cameras on site, and glad we were like very phony and not phony, camera-y. I meant phony like phone, but had all these different things going on as resources to look back into things. Where did we put the trench, and where did we put the conduit, and did we put that thing on the wall, and did we film the time capsule that we put under the stairs and things like that. So yeah, pretty cool. I mean, it's been a process and been a big adventure, the build itself, and also just trying to film and document something special during the build. And I would say we'd love to continue it, and we're working on it, but it's not defined exactly how we're moving forward with it yet.
Well, I'm excited to see what you guys do. I think it'll be fun.
Yeah.
I'm happy for you guys. I think it's a great project. I can't say enough good things about it. Yeah, thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thanks for inviting me on. I'm stoked that you're into it and that you're excited about what we have going on, because sometimes I get in my own head thinking like, am I the only person on the planet that even thinks this is like cool? So I'm hoping that we create something that, if nothing else, people around here can appreciate as a cool way of capturing one of the many different super cool elements that Humboldt has going on. So.
Well, I think it does that. Do you want to plug where people can find it, where they can find the vlogs, all your stuff, your YouTube page?
Pretty much if you type in Viltrakis, that will take you anywhere. But we have the typical Instagram, YouTube, Facebook. We're probably most active on Instagram and YouTube, so that's where we send people. But it's just at Viltrakis Design Build. Or you can search my name, Joey Viltrakis, and I think that's what our YouTube channel is still getting uploaded under. But Viltrakis, and you will find something related to us on there.
All right, well, thanks, Joey. This was fun, man.
Awesome.